The Russians and the Japanese went to war. It's a disaster. Russians are done. There's no tomorrow. They trigger a famine because they're running out of horses. And they're actually literally taking horses from the farmers to have cavalry. And as a result, the farmers don't have enough horses to farm. And the Russians are literally out of food. Roosevelt tells the Russians and Japanese, I have an idea. Why don't you guys come to San Francisco and I will negotiate out a peace deal with you guys. What are you getting out of this war? You're getting nothing. Let me end it for you. So he puts the Japanese in one hotel. He puts the Russians in a second hotel. He goes to a third hotel. He can't be in a hotel the Japanese or the Russians are in because then the other side will think he's biased. And then he goes to one delegation one morning first, and the next day he'll go to the other delegation first. And then when he's done with that delegation, he goes across the street to the other hotel. He goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, like the shuttle in a carpet making boom. And that's where the term shuttle diplomacy comes from, right? And then somebody went, ooh, because we could do that with a bus too. And then we had a shuttle bus. And then for some reason, somebody thought a spaceship, and we had a space shuttle too. It's a device for making carpets, the shuttle. In any case, that's what he does. And in the beginning, they have to work out really important details. Like, unbelievable stuff like where will they hold the negotiation, which hotel. After arguing and fussing, they need to pick the room. So he's going back and forth. Which room in this hotel is suitable? They find a room. Problem is, room has one door in. So who goes in first, the Russians or the Japanese? Obviously, they have to go in at the same time. So he goes to the management for the hotel and he goes, can you just punch a second hole in the wall and put a door so they can walk in at the same time? And management's like, whatever you want, Mr. President. They punch a hole in the room and they put in a second doorway. And now, are they going to have a round table, a square table, a triangular table, a trapezoid table? They have to work out all of these really critical details, painfully, one after the other. They finally get it worked out. But here's the thing about diplomacy. You want to have the deal done before you go to the table, right? You don't want to actually sit them down and go, wait a minute, let's work out the deal. You want to have it done. So he goes to them and he goes, what was the problem again? Here's the problem. The Russians had four railroad tracks. They had one that went from Warsaw to Moscow, one that went from Warsaw to St. Petersburg, one that went from St. Petersburg to Moscow, and then they had one that went from Moscow to Vladivostok. So it was 11 or 12 time zones across. I think it was 12 at the time. Russia's still 11 time zones. The Earth has 24. Is Russia big? It's amazing. 11 time zones, and that's after they lost one. They thought they got Port Arthur, a port city in China, the other side of Manchuria, on the other side of Korea. So they started building a railroad track from Vladivostok to Port Arthur so that they could expedite trade from China to Vladivostok on its way then to Moscow. So they started building this railroad track. The problem is the Japanese had recently just attacked and conquered Manchuria. So technically they were building the railroad track in Japanese territory. And the Japanese went, what are you doing? Stop, this is ours. We conquered this fair and square. That's how this works. We run over, we plant a flag before anybody else does. And then we explain to the locals that you belong to us now because we planted this flag. And then they go, oh, I missed out. I should have planted my flag first. So that's why flags are very important. We should spend a lot of time designing good ones. The Japanese tell the Russians, please stop, please stop. The Russians decide, we're just going to ignore them. We're just going to build a track, never ask for permission, and keep ignoring them. And so finally the Japanese went, that's it. And they attacked. And that's what was the start of the Russo-Japanese War. So Roosevelt has worked out for the Russians and the Japanese what to do. He's got it all figured out. They're at the table. He's in one spot, the Russians and Japanese across from each other. And he turns to the Russians. He goes, just like we rehearsed. Just like we rehearsed. And the Russians go, we would like to ask permission to build a railroad track through Manchuria to Port Arthur from Vladivostok. And the Japanese go, all you had to do was ask. And that's it. Isn't that amazing? A few months later, Germany and France are getting all riled up over Morocco. And Roosevelt decides to get involved again. And he writes a letter to the German chancellor saying, I would really like to do what I did for you in France that I just did for Russia. And what do you think? And the German chancellor writes a really rude letter about something to the effect of gutless worm. Or it's just mean, nasty. Roosevelt writes another letter and he says, look, I've seen war from the inside. It's not true, but in this case, I like illusion. You know what I mean? Like, he saw them shoot dead people from a morgue, but still, I don't care. I'm ready. Sometimes good lie is a good thing to do. And he goes, I've seen war from the inside and it's horrible. And he says, please, I'm begging you, let me do this. Don't start a global war for some territory in Africa. And he signed it, gutless worm, the letter. And the German chancellor is blown away that the American president would humble himself like this. And he goes, all right, let's do this. They go to Spain. Everybody piles on. The English are there. The Italians are there. Nobody knows why. There's right, all these different, really, it's just France, United States, and Germany. And they work out a deal where they change the border of Togoland, and Germany accepts it. And Germany actually ends up looking a little dumb because it was like you almost started World War I for a few acres of land. And Roosevelt wins the Nobel Prize. He becomes the first sitting president to get it.